Well, good morning, everybody. First, just a quick note here. The hotel I chose to stay in here in New Jersey has got terrible internet, and this just occasionally happens to me throughout the year. So I wasn't able to pull up very many animations. This was actually one of only a couple that I think I was able to get to load this morning, and I hope that the video doesn't take hours to get to the internet. So we'll try to figure this out, but along the way, a lot of static maps today, but I've got an important story that I want to share with you. I've been reading through your comments. I always read them, and I want to talk a bit about Kansas in a few moments. I want to talk about what might be coming out of the Caribbean, and I want to review what I think would happen if this La Niña does actually dominate the pattern through late fall and winter. So let's kind of get into all of that. But you've been watching one of the few animations I did get to load, which is some satellite data through early this morning. And here again we have potential tropical cyclone number 8, never upgraded to Helene. It was a bit confusing to me yesterday, given that we did have sustained winds in this over 50 miles an hour, but it did not have the tropical characteristics. It was sheared out, elongated, no central circulation, and as a result, it did not get that criteria. National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center did a phenomenal job explaining that. But yesterday morning, I was a bit confused, and I appreciate them going into that. But the other part of yesterday that was really quite interesting was the depth of this low that's over the kind of the Great Basin area. And it's just amazing to watch the cloud streets and the deep storms form that are aided by the lift of the mountains. And then the huge, just absolutely huge storms that erupted yesterday on the leading edge of this, plus the stronger winds that surrounded this system. And even though I'm not going to be able to show you kind of an animation of the upper level height field as to where it's going to go, you can still imagine the main story we've been talking about. We have more of these coming, these deeper lows that are coming into the west for a little while now, for the rest of this week actually, and they're going to have a big impact on the flow pattern across the rest of the country. So let's get a quick review of what the current one has done. Last 3 days of hail. Just wanted to show you that some of the storms in the Central Plains were hailers. A lot of still deep instability in the atmosphere, as you saw with the very kind of explosive convective towers that popped up on the previous animation. And we can see just where hail's been put down because of that. And over the last 72 hours, some of the storms put down some heavy rain, well over an inch and a half. We saw the remnants here of Francine continuing just to kind of spread their way toward the south and east, kind of elongated here. And then some of the rainfall that hit parts of the Carolinas yesterday easily topped a foot right along the coast here. But we did see widespread 1 to 5 inches of rainfall into North Carolina. We're going to continue to watch this later today as this moisture attempts to spread a little bit farther to the north. What was interesting about where potential tropical cyclone number 8 came on shore was just how sharp the cutoff was in South Carolina. As you saw in my forecast video, both from last Friday and from Monday, I thought the forecast did better with predicting the rains in this part of South Carolina, but there's a pretty sharp cutoff right in through here that manifests itself as that circulation continued to take shape. So thinking all of that through, let's come back to bigger picture things. Over the next 10 days, this is a 10-day forecast. We are going to watch, again, we have at least a sequence, next 2 to 3 times, we're going to watch systems come into this direction and eject up into the Canadian prairie. I did have a conversation with a colleague of mine yesterday about this region, and he said the canola crop will love it, but that's about it. Some of the other crops in this area, this is too much rain at the wrong time of year, but the canola crop can still put on yield with this, which is important to understand. But thinking this through, I noticed that the latest European model run out for the next 10 days really started to increase the chances of rainfall in this area and also over here in parts of the Appalachian Mountains and getting into some areas that are very, very dry. Now, that's not to say there aren't other places, but I'm thinking specifically about the potential for some heavy rains into parts of Kansas. And the reason is, like I said, I read your comments. A lot of you from Kansas watch the videos and you provide me with a lot of input, and I feed off that. I love that. Please continue to do that. But I wanted to talk to you just for a moment about this, because if we look back, the development of drought across this area has been prolific, especially in the Central Plains, right in through this area here, bordering on the Western Corn Belt, and then a large section of the Eastern Corn Belt, which we've been focusing a lot on lately and talked about yesterday. This extends over here into the Appalachian Mountains. In West Virginia, have been extremely dry. We have pockets of the Northeast that are quite dry. And then there are places throughout the West, which I know we have a different control on water resources in the West than the eastern half of the country does. But still, there's areas here like up toward the Palouse, pockets throughout Montana, despite the heavy rainfall as of late, still showing deep deficits in their soil moisture. I did put together just a simple graphic here looking at the latest U.S. drought monitor, the one released last week, and the change. But I want to give you a couple of stats here. Right now, 69% of the lower 48 is in some form of drought. So that includes this abnormally dry category. But we have 34% in D1 to D4. So we're looking again at these colors from moderate drought to exceptional. And I just wrote down that since June, when that number was 11%, we've more than tripled the area. So we've taken ourselves into a very dry late summer and fall. And I just want to come back, though, again, to the comments about Kansas, because you've been having a great discussion. I've been following along, and I wanted to provide you with some data about this, because we do have worry that as we go forward, according to the National Weather Service, that this shade of color here, which represents drought development likely, the Central Plains is one of these areas that over the coming months, all the way toward the beginning of winter, there is concern about drought developing. Same thing for the Ohio River Valley. While the models right now are suggesting improvement across a few key areas, including where Francine's moisture just went through. We do expect the Northwest to be on the wetter side of average too, and we'll talk more about that in just a few moments. But I wanted to show you this. You were talking about the almost like cyclical behavior that you find to Kansas drought, and I understand where that sense is coming from, because I went back and I reconstructed for Kansas, just ending in August, which is the latest month we have data for, a 36-month running total. Okay, so there's overlap in this, but it's a 36-month, so it's not a year, not 2 years, it's 3 years. And what I noticed in this is if you just look back from the 80s on, we tended to have these 2 to 3 year long time periods that are in between. Well, you can count it with me. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and then 3 years of dryness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of above average precip, and then 3 dry. Then you just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then 3 years of dry. So the hope in this is, even though we can't decompose this time series and make a true cycle out of it, I've tried, it doesn't work. But the hope is that this pattern might be on some sort of a repeat. I'm just looking purely at the data, doing some poor man statistics on this, and just saying that if this is any sort of behavior that has been on repeat since the 80s, we could be looking at a breakout. Now, understand this is all of Kansas, and remember, eastern Kansas versus western Kansas are two entirely different climate regimes. But the reality is we're just kind of seeing this behavior, wondering if we're going to kind of break back out of this going forward. So I wanted to give you the data so that you could continue your own analysis and talk about it. And the website is called Climate at a Glance. Just go Google it, bring it up. You can choose by state, division, county, city, region, nation, globe. You can pick whatever variable you want, look at time periods, play around with it, put trend lines on it. This is just a fantastic tool provided by NOAA. And again, just Google Climate at a Glance and you'll have access to it. And they even give you the data. So you can plot this and manage it yourself. But I just wanted you to see that because you have been discussing it so much, and I hope you find that instructive and useful. Okay, next 7 days though. So we saw the forecast for the 10-day anomalies. Let's look at the 7-day. The WPC showing where the heaviest rain is going to be over the next 7 days here. Again, we're still watching these same systems eject. We do see the above average precipitation over the next 7 days. Clipping part of Kansas, but hitting Nebraska. This would be key in Nebraska, given how dry it's been so far this month. And this, again, stretches up here into parts of the western Corn Belt. Now, I say all of that and understand that if you are in this region, let's just kind of highlight it here, it's going to be extremely dry. Same thing for the Southwest and the Columbia Basin and the broader area that extends into central Oregon. So we have these holes in this pattern that have been dry and are expected to continue to stay dry. But one of my other animations that did work this morning is this one, and we continue to see the pattern loaded up with these Bering Sea lows. And this is what has been a part of that broader discussion we've had about the West Pacific Oscillation sending systems. Now, I apologize. I'm unable to show you the animation, but you can go to agweather.com and look at all of them. You can go look at the heights yourself and watch the progression of these to get the timing. But I just wanted to tell you that is the mainstay of this pattern for the near term. So today's severe weather threat is in the western and high plains, stretching from Montana right down here to parts of Nebraska and Colorado. Tomorrow, we see a kind of a narrow band starting from the Red River of the north back to the headwaters of the Red River to the south, or of the south, excuse me. And then as we get into the day on the third day here, this would be back to Minnesota, Iowa. This is when that system rolls through that we've been having a discussion about. Now, I left this up in the hopes, see, it's just not animating. It's not on my website side. It's just with this hotel internet. So I apologize, and I'm guessing that this isn't going to play either. Darn it. So let's just kind of get through and think it through in terms of the total pattern. The National Blend of Models, this is their 7-day forecast. I can't get these static maps going. This is the artificial intelligence. This is the high-res, European high-res. And this is the GFS. Now you do notice that there's a pretty sizable difference here between the GFS and the new HRES. And you can see that similarly between that the artificial intelligence and the HRES look very similar to one another, but they're very different from the GFS 7-day and also the NBM and the WPC 7-day. So these rainfall totals are not set here, and we're certainly looking at changes in this area that could be important. So those model differences, when I get back home tonight and have faster internet tomorrow, I'll be sure and show you those things. Okay, I want to also point out that it is cold enough in this pattern to snow in the western mountains, and we're going to be picking up some snow. In fact, I saw some Twitter videos this morning of some of the snow falling currently at the high elevation in parts of the Rocky Mountains here. But these systems will bring some stronger winds, and as you can see here, we are still expecting in the plains widespread gusts 40-50 miles an hour are possible with each of these lows that eject over the next 7 days or so. So let's just kind of boil this down into a couple of, I think, just maps that give us the broader picture here. This is the 10-day probability of an inch. So we're looking at the much wetter conditions in this area, which is desperately needed to finish this crop. But on the drier side of it, who's getting less than half of an inch, or maybe who's getting less than 1/10 of an inch, there's that corridor outlined for you that has very low probability of picking up heavier rain. So including Texas, parts of the southeast, the Ohio River Valley into the northeast. And again, parts of the western plains, although there'll be storms here today, and then we see here in the Columbia Basin, diving down into California's Central Valley into the southwest. Now, we don't expect it here, but these areas to be dry are just important to focus on. And I show you that because from the last 30 days, this area in Oklahoma, for example, has been extremely dry. Some places no precipitation. Southeast Kansas, no precipitation. Very limited throughout the central, western, and eastern corn belts for all of that. And even though we just had the tropical system come in, which has not been accounted for yet in this data, it's not here yet, okay? This has got a 1-day lag on it, and so tomorrow we'll see this show up. But this whole area extending into the northeast has been quite dry as well. All right, second big topic I want to get into is this. This animation somehow loaded. I don't know how, but it did. And what it's showing you here is that going out over the next 10 days, the Bermuda High is there. It's way, way, way away from us, over by the Cape Verde Islands, which are here, or the Azores. Now, what's interesting is this. And there's some research that's been done by many great scientists, the most recent of which is from a colleague named Philip Papin. Okay, I hope I'm saying his name correctly. But he is studying something called the Caribbean Gyre, or the Central American Gyre. And let's see if I can get this to load full size. Oh, great. This is his climatology of these events that develop down here in Central America. They are absolutely critical to the water resources in Central America, also for like the Panama Canal. But what he did was he studied the time of year when you can get low pressure, the circulations developing over this part of Central America or this side, the western side of the Caribbean. And you notice that while it is rare in July and August, this is often due to too strong of winds. That's one reason, just one reason, coming through the Caribbean. In September, October, November, it is a source region for development of tropical low pressure. And I bring that up because we notice that over the next 10 days, something is building here. And the models continue to increase the risk. And I mentioned this in my video yesterday, but my colleague Matt Reardon said, hey, make sure you check out this paper again. I read this years ago, but this is just a great example of how this this region has the potential to develop low pressure systems. So tip of the cap to Matt for pointing this out after we just kind of gave a general overview of it yesterday. And again, some of the models are attempting, these little squiggly lines are just where some of the forecast models, the ensemble members of the European model, are attempting to drop low pressure and track it somewhere. And what I'm concerned about is something here that comes into the Gulf of Mexico, or maybe goes here toward Florida. And I bring that up because of my website. Take a look at the day 8 through 14 maps, specifically the European ensemble and the European artificial intelligence. Now, if you go off the GFS, it's taken something here next week over toward Cuba and Florida. But the artificial intelligence, which nailed, really got Francine correct, picked up early on potential tropical cyclone 8, found this, WPO pattern early. Well, let's see if I can get this to load here. There is its forecast for week 2, and it's attempting to pull something right here toward Mississippi, Alabama, and the Panhandle. Now, do not look at this and go, oh man, we're going to get hammered here with a huge system. No, it could go there, it could go here. I don't know. I'm just saying there's something to be watching late next week coming out of the Caribbean, and it's consistent with the climatological studies of that region, and we need to be paying attention to it. All right. So just wanted to bring that up. Let's now go over to a discussion about temperatures. So let's get over to some frost stuff here. The coldest air is in the western United States. This is mostly at high elevation here, but we're going to watch the temperatures play. Darn it. I'm so sorry about this. Let's just go to these maps to kind of get an idea. You can see them in 5-day chunks. This is the next 5 days, the day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. So while the west is quite cold, you can see it in the GFS as well. We do see the west warming up. So these last few troughs go through this week, and then the west goes back into a bit of a ridging pattern, and we see that sticking around here for a while. But there is a large signal in the eastern Great Lakes all the way up to the Hudson Bay into eastern Canada that's quite warm. That tends to stick around for a bit. Could we finish the month of September with a little bit of cooler air in this region? That's possible, but that's a model trend we're going to have to watch. Overall, just as a review, I think the West Pacific Oscillation dominates the end of this month and the start of October. And just want to show you again the CPC outlook for September 28th to October 11th. This makes a lot of sense to me right now. Other than something coming out of the tropics, this is the way the pattern seems to be established. And even the European is picking up on this as well, with better chances of above normal temperatures more often than cooler. And I just want to remind you, in October, though, we do get cold shots of air. So to be warmer than normal in October is not the same, of course, as being warmer than normal in summer. So we will start to see our first frost attempts here during the month of October as well. But is it a drier outlook? Yeah, I mean, this would make a lot of sense given the WPO signal, which we've been talking a lot about for the last 7 or 8 days, and then also the building of La Niña. That's what you tend to get with La Niña in October. I'm just going to tell you one more time down here, this is what will not be understood well by the models. You already saw the potential for some development here. One system comes up and this forecast doesn't verify. All right, so we have to be careful with this forecast here across the south. But the thing is that there's still a pretty strong signal that La Niña is going to continue to exert more of an influence on the patterns as we approach fall. It is currently at negative 0.85 degrees C below normal here, which is firmly into the temperature criteria to be talking about La Niña. The trade winds are stronger. And so what I want to do to kind of finish this video up is give you some kind of reference points on this. Fall into winter is when this will really begin to exert a bigger influence, as I said. So we're going to look at that whole time period. So November to March. I just made a couple of maps looking historically at the ERA 5 data on temperature on the left and precipitation rate on the right. And I've kind of labeled a few things here. This would be November to March, so our cold season across the United States. And what you notice in this is that there are better chances due to a weaker but highly variable polar jet of getting cold air outbreaks. It does not mean every day this winter is going to be bone cold, for this whole region, just bone-chillingly cold. And it also doesn't mean the whole winter is going to be mild here. It just means we're going to favor more mild days on these weaker subtropical jet stream flow that'll come across this area. And that's also why we see the drier risk. So Kansas, what's important for you, since we talked about you earlier, is that La Niña could end up being a drier signal for this fall and winter. unless we break out of it by the time we get into early spring, we could be looking at the dryer risk persisting into an important time period like late March next year. Ohio River Valley tends to be kind of an origin place for storm systems to develop. So we tend to be wet at times. When it gets cold, we tend to flip over to ice and snow very quickly here. Eastern Canada is wet. The Northeast is wet, but drier in the Southeast. And the Northwest United States tends to have great snowpack, bigger events, better onshore flow out of the Gulf of Alaska, while we tend to have fewer atmospheric rivers that hit California. Now remember, it only takes one or two in January, February, March to pack up these mountains full of snow, but it's just important to say that a weaker subtropical jet often doesn't favor that. I've also done the same thing over the same time period for South America, and just remember that it's a wetter north, drier south picture. We tend to have lower risk of really adverse precipitation patterns here across much of the Cerrado, bordering up against the Amazon. And if there's drought risk, it's higher down in southern Brazil and into Argentina. Now, right now, ahead of this, we're still in spring for South America. We know that there are fronts that are clearing this area, increasing precipitation. Just wanted to show you yesterday's smoke still here in parts of central Brazil from some of the wildfires. But over the next 10 days, the models continue to be aggressively wet in parts of Argentina. These are huge spring rains hitting parts of southern Brazil as well. And this is actually going to be a bigger problem, I think, for a lot of folks, because this much rainfall is going to limit any sort of field activity, as some of these rainfall totals are, you see the colors down here. 50 millimeters is 2 inches. So we're looking at some places picking up 4 inches of rain if the model is going to verify. So we need to watch that carefully. Now, yesterday I showed you that the weekend model trends from the European model went drier in October, and today they flip back over. So this is what we're doing. This is just kind of model chaos here. We're looking for consistency. The model has not been consistent. It was very good for about 10 to 12 days on predicting October rains. Then the weekend it fell off, and now it's back to this again. This is the October precipitation anomaly forecast from the European model. And if we just go, watch. I'll go to yesterday. Much drier. Day before that, this would have been over the weekend. Now it flipped back again. So I'm just telling you, the model showing you these rains in through here, they're coming in, probably the second and third week of October. And if it verifies, it's going to be it'll be a fast plant. So just wanted to keep you aware of that and the potential drought risk in Argentina. Looking forward to get back on internet when I get home. That's a little faster, but we'll stop it here, and I appreciate it. Thanks.